Here we are again with a product review. These Sporran cantles, a company whose name, their link is in the description. They'd asked to post an advert on my page, and I took a look at it and agreed, and immediately ordered a pair. I took a look at their product line and ordered a pair of brass Sporran cantles, just to see if they were as good as they looked, and they are. I'll back up a bit. This is a so-called Jacobite or Culloden. I didn't overly concern myself with the nomenclature, which I believe has been retroactively assigned to these things. This is an example of the British MOD, Ministry of Defence, Sporran cantle that was rushed into production for Her late Majesty's coronation in 1953. Because, of course, the British Empire had bankrupted itself, had sacrificed itself to defeat the Nazis. They had no money. Their first-class equipment was in rubbish shape. So they contracted out for these things. And almost certainly they were made in what is now Pakistan. And these things are the gold standard, or have been for me for several years. Originally, it was with a white leather pouch. You can see that history later. This, I believe, is called the Mark I. Hooray. Whatever. But, and what I had done is, because I used to have friends all over the UK watching for these things, looking for them in car boot sales and elsewhere, because I would get L&M and others to make a nice leather pouch, because they had snaps that you could originally, so the soldier could unsnap the leather from the brass, so he could polish the brass with Brasso and a rag, and he could paint the leather with pipe clay, which is basically chalk, without cross-contamination. So they were wonderful things, and I would do these sporrans, and then eventually the supply didn't exactly dry up, but other people started doing it as well. And now, if you find one of these things on eBay, just the cantle alone, you could be paying £300 for these things. So that became unviable. I later had established or regained a connection with the company in Sialkot, Pakistan, which had done the things, or at least they'd inherited the tooling to do the things. And I had that source of supply for a while, but then that dried up as well. But Arama kilts, I believe it is, I selected two styles, the sort of square top and the Jacobean or the Culloden style, whatever it's called. And I'm very impressed with them. They are the proper heavy gauge of brass. The tooling, the stamping looks the same. They could very well be using the original tooling from 1952, 1953. Very well made throughout. They're slightly, the semicircular one is slightly differenced in that we have the top catch there, but they've added two extra filials. But that's, if you're historically inclined, that's certainly evident in older Sporran. So all in all, this is a first-class piece of kit. The only real difference that I can see, really, is you can see the depth of the loop on the original and on the replica. The replica looks about twice as deep. I'm going to have to make a Sporran and wear it for a while to tell you if that difference actually signifies. But I don't believe it does. I can't imagine that it does. If it does, I'll tell you. But that's, I can't remember off the top of my head what I paid for these things, but that's money well spent. The other one is, again, it's a modern interpretation of a classical style, again with the extra filials, and with the slightly deeper loops. And on both of these, what we have is to fasten the okay, that's a bit asymmetrical. We're going to see if that poses a problem or not. We have one side deeper than the other there. You can see that one's longer than that one. I'm going to find out practically if that makes a difference or not. Okay, that's something I just spotted. We don't see that there. They're about the same. There's a slight difference there. And the only other difference really between these and the originals is that the originals had snap top dome fasteners. And I used to be a bit concerned about where I could find these ones. I was robbing them out of old out of old Ministry of Defense sporrans and recycling them, but somebody else has posted a link, which I'll, pardon me, I'll also include in the description below, with the proper name and size of these dome fasteners so that you can replace them if need be. What Aramakilta has done is they've included threaded posts with acorn nuts on the end. And the acorn nuts are quite long. I would say too long to use initially because they overlap each other like a crocodile's teeth. So I think before I could use either of these, I'm going to have to find, because these are acorn nuts, I'm going to have to find a standard nut that doesn't have a dome on the end, not an acorn nut, pardon me, that matches that thread, and then spin the nut down onto the base of the thread, and then cut the threaded shank to the right length. And then because I put the nut on beforehand, if I cut that off, if I snip it or however I do it, I'm probably just going to use snips. By backing the nut off, it'll chase the threads so that I'll be able to easily, or relatively easily, put the dome nut back on place. But aside from those very, very minor points, the depth of the loops and the length of these screw posts, I think these things are absolutely first class. This remains to be seen if this is going to be an obstacle or not when I actually make a sporran out of it. But there you go. I think, pardon me, on the balance of it, I'm very impressed with these things. So I think with this knowledge, you can bid with confidence. Thank you, and carry on.